Well, hello there, Richard Tubb here, and welcome to another episode of Tubb Talk, the podcast for IT consultants. Now, long-time listeners of this show will know that I really enjoy using this podcast as a platform to shine a light on the tools and solutions that you may not have heard about, but which can help you to grow your IT solution provider or managed service provider business. So today I'm excited because I'm speaking with the founder of a really interesting new tool, new platform for MSP cybersecurity. Benjamin Netter is a French entrepreneur, he's a veteran of the tech industry, and is the founder of Riot, an all-in-one platform that drives better protection for MSPs. Now, Riot is a software as a service platform, a SaaS platform, and the company is on a mission to turn employees into your company's biggest cybersecurity assets. Benjamin, welcome to Tubb Talk.
Hey, Richard. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I think before we came on air, we were just talking about you give Paris as your hometown, but Riot is headquartered in San Francisco, I think. So where are you joining us from today?
Paris today.
Oh,
but
Paris.
The company started in San Francisco.
So right. In San Francisco, but you're in Paris today. How is Paris for the tech startup scene? Do you enjoy working there?
It's awesome right now. It's much better than 5 years ago. It's growing very rapidly.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with managed service providers in Paris. Wonderful scene there, lovely people, and the food. Well, that could be another podcast in itself. But so I guess to jump in, how would you describe what Riot does?
So we prepare employees for cyber attacks. So that's we created a platform that initially was mostly sending and simulating phishing attacks on employees to detect weaknesses. So you would as a CTO or a CISO, you would set up the platform very easily, launch an attack on your employees, and see who's vulnerable and needs more training. Basically. And so what we discover is that we were solving a problem, but creating a new one. So we were solving the who is vulnerable in my team, but creating the problem of now I have 20% of my team who's vulnerable. What should I do with that? And so that's when we created the second part of Riot. We created a bot called I call it a cybersecurity companion that plugs into Slack and Microsoft Teams. Called Albert. And Albert is teaching cybersecurity basics to employees, so covering all the needs for cybersecurity awareness to grow the cybersecurity culture in companies.
Yeah, makes sense. There's so much that I want to speak to you about not just Albert, but Riot as a company. But tell us about the team at Riot. So we've already said you're in Paris. The business is headquartered in San Francisco. Who else is involved in the business? What does it look like?
It's pretty simple today. So we're 25 people, mostly based in Paris. We have some people in England as well. But the team is pretty simple. It's half tech, half sales today, with some people who are also in customer success. But that's mostly sales and tech.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you're managing a remote team, England, San Francisco, Paris. This is, I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs on the show here. This is the modern way of doing things, isn't it?
No, I'm trying to avoid the remote experience.
Really?
But,
okay.
From time to time, you end up finding the right people somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it happened a few times. And so now we have someone in London. We have someone in Mallorca. And I think that's pretty much it. The rest of the team is in Paris. And initially I was in San Francisco, but I had to go back to France because of COVID.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know as well from looking into Riot, there's an interesting story behind why you created Riot as a business. Can you share a little bit more with us?
Of course, yeah. So Riot is my second company, actually. Prior to Riot, I co-founded a fintech called October. We were doing loans to European companies. And I think we lent around $1 billion euros worth of loan to this day to European companies. And I founded this company in 2014, ran tech for 5 years. And part of my role was to be sure that so we created this platform that was handling hundreds of millions of euros of transactions every year, and part of my job was to making sure that we don't get hacked, obviously. So I was spending a lot of money on protecting the platform, because I was pretty sure that a hacker would find a clever way to hijack the money, find a loophole on an endpoint, something very sophisticated. And so spending a lot of money on pen testing, bounties, and so on. And one day in 2019, an employee received a phishing email and clicked enter its password. And so that's basically how we got hacked the first time. And so that's when I realized I was wrong about hackers. They're much more pragmatic than we think. And they don't want to spend time hacking around, trying to find loopholes in complex systems when they can just send phishing emails and enter your company that way. Yeah. So that's actually when Riot started, because I was doing cybersecurity awareness the old way at the time. So basically gathering everyone in a room and speaking about cybersecurity for an hour. I was pretty sure that no one was listening. So that's how I decided to over the weekend to launch an attack on my team. And so I launched this attack on the whole team, on 110 employees at the time. And the first person who clicked entering its password was the CFO. And
wow!
In the end, on my first attack, 20% of them ended up clicking entering the password. And I think we recruited well, and I thought we recruited people who had good, cybersecurity hygiene and knowledge and culture. And I discovered I was wrong. And I was telling the story around to my CTO friends, and they were saying, "Hey, I want to try it on my team." And so that's when I realized Riot was more than a side project.
Wow. It's so amazing. Well, first of all, it's really scary, isn't it? When you see,
It is.
You and I get phishing emails all the time and things. And I can tell you, I've not been caught yet, but it's been very close, because some of them are very, very good. And so I think for people who are not as savvy as you and I and the listeners to this show, the odds of getting caught are increasing daily, aren't they? They're very sophisticated out there. But yeah, what was that reaction like when you realized that the CFO had been caught out?
I had mixed feelings, because it was also an approval that my side project was useful somehow. So I had this feeling of I think at the time we just raised a Series B of 40 million, and basically the CFO is the person who has the key to the keys to the account. And so to me, CFO should be the most prepared employee in the team. And so I had mixed feelings. Yes.
Yeah, it's good. And I think, the audience of this show predominantly managed service providers, IT professionals who look after clients. There's a lot of chief financial officers, a lot of accounts people out there as well that they look after. And unfortunately, it's all too common, isn't it, that the people who have got the keys to the kingdom within their client sites are the ones most likely, A, to be targeted by the cyber criminals, and B, unfortunately, because they move very fast and just click things without thinking, they're the ones most likely to be caught as well, in my experience anyway.
That's true. And so, yeah, you have to prepare them for cyber attacks anyway.
Yeah. So you mentioned, thank you for sharing the story of that. It's an amazing story, and I can understand why Riot came out of that situation there. Very common as well, I would say, that I've interviewed lots of people on this podcast who have created a tool to fix a problem and then realized that lots of other people need that as well. So your CTO, chief technical officer friends who are saying, hey, can we have that tool themselves? So the next part of the story, I guess, I read that Riot has emerged from Y Combinator. You've raised $3 million in their 2020 seed round. What has that journey been like for you as an entrepreneur?
I don't know. It's a weird feeling, but basically what happened after I realized Riot was actually maybe a product. I wasn't even sure it was a company, but I knew at this point that it was a product. I applied. So basically, for the first time ever, YC was YC is Y Combinator.
Yeah.
I've been telling it so much in the past 3 years that I try to shorten. But so basically, YC was interviewing for the first time in Paris. So basically, initially, YC was bringing everyone to San Francisco for the interviews. And for the first time, they were traveling. So the team was doing interviews in San Francisco for the US based companies, in Paris for European companies, and I think in Mumbai for Asian companies or something like this. And basically, you have this team of 16 people, very talented partners, going to Paris and interviewing companies. I thought it's probably a good way to challenge my idea of what Riot could be. And they were interviewing like 3 minutes walk from my place. So I
easy.
thought, hey, I don't have much to lose. I mean, worst case scenario, the interview is like 10 minutes. I lost 15 minutes walking back and forth, 3 minutes and 10 minutes interviews, and that's it. And I get a ton of feedback on my ID. And YC is very selective. I think they take 1% of all applications. And so I was pretty sure I was not part of those 1%. And I ended up getting accepted. And the next day, I had coffee with my co-founders, telling them that, this first company I founded, October, was doing pretty well. But I mean, Riot and cybersecurity is a huge opportunity. I think it's going to be one of the top 3 problems in the world in the next 10 years. I have to go. YC is like a childhood dream to me. So that was end of 2019, and I ended up working at October on last day of December and started working on Riot on January 3rd. So basically, I took 3 days between both experiences.
Wow, that is an amazing story from start to finish. So, I'm really impressed with where you come from, where you're going. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying. This is the biggest challenge that's going to be facing not just the IT industry, but many of us in the world, full stop, there. So if I can, let's get into the weeds a little bit with cybersecurity. I've already said I think the majority of MSPs listening to this would have experienced chief financial officers, CEOs, bosses who, perhaps are the weakest link within their organization, unfortunately. But it's probably fair to say that the majority of MSPs listening would probably agree that the weakest link in cybersecurity, full stop, is human beings. So how do you see Riot helping MSPs strengthen that weak link? How can we use technology to help the human beings here?
It's a good question, and it's hard to answer, but I think what we do very well is we created a platform that detects vulnerabilities and helps fixing them. And so we always have this mix of detecting vulnerabilities, auditing, and then finding the right way to fix it. And I think the first way that has been done in cybersecurity is phishing simulation. So you detect the employees who are vulnerable to phishing simulation, and then you target specific courses on those employees, basically. And I think we took this method of detecting and fixing, and we've spread it to other topics in cybersecurity. So I'll give you a simple example, but we deeply connect with two-factor with Google Workspace. Yeah. And we detect employees who don't have two-factor authentication activated. And so we know exactly the percentage of your employees who don't have two-factor authentication activated. And we can target a course specifically on those employees. And we can guide them to activate two-factor authentication. And we see a huge impact on companies. And that, two-factor authentication seems to be pretty basic, but still, I think 50% of all employees don't have two-factor authentication activated. And it's something that you can do in 5 minutes that will improve tremendously your security online. So it's really important to do it. So we have this mix of detecting and fixing. And we do it for other topics, obviously. We do it for data breaches. We do it for digital footprint, which is very important to me, I think. We do it for obviously for phishing, and we're trying to do it with smishing as well, but it's much more difficult to do. And on top of that, what we do is that we report it to the manager, because we have access to the data. We can report the impact of the product on the security of the company to the manager. And I think this is a unique mix that we do. So the detecting, fixing, and reporting that has never been done before in cybersecurity awareness. And that's something that's very unique about Riot, is proving that we actually had an impact.
Agreed. And we've had people on the show here, Benjamin, who have had products where they can educate end users, or they can detect, simulate phishing and detect vulnerabilities and things like that. What excited me about speaking to you today is that you're wrapping it all together. You're wrapping it all in one parcel for MSPs. And where you said about end users, 50% of them not having multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication turned on, it is such a simple thing to do, but actually getting people to understand why it's powerful, that's the key. And I know lots of MSPs listening are going to be sort of pulling their hair out saying, oh, just turn this on and it will eliminate or mitigate a lot of the threats that are out there. So really, really interesting to see that you've got a platform that does all of it. Can I ask, you mentioned Google Workspace there. Can I ask about integration into other products? So lots of MSPs, for instance, use Microsoft Teams, Active Directory, that type of thing. What else does it integrate with, Riot?
Yeah, we started with Google Workspace, but we now integrate deeply with Microsoft too. So basically, the same set of features for both platforms. So we send the courses over Slack, but we also send it over Microsoft Teams.
Yeah.
And the experience is exactly the same. The content is exactly the same. It's really the same set of features for both.
Yeah. And I guess rewinding a bit, I'm intrigued in your personal experience, when you found out the CFO in your previous company had fallen prey to, a simulated phishing attack. Of course, it could have been a lot worse. And for anybody listening to this who, actually deploys a simulated phishing attack and finds out perhaps even that their own team within the MSP are vulnerable to this, how do you react? How do you approach that individual and educate them? Because presumably kicking the door open to their office and screaming at them for being an idiot is not the best way forward.
No, it's not the best way. But a side effect of running phishing simulation is it's a wake-up call for a lot of employees too. Yeah. So, when they click and they understand, we have what we call the remedial page, where once they enter the password, we have a page saying, hey, bad news, you got phished, but good news, it's an exercise. And then for a few weeks, because it's I wouldn't say traumatic experience, but it's a bit of a wake-up call to employees that they are also they can be targets to hackers. For a few weeks, they are much more careful than usual and to phishing attacks. So you have to repeat the exercises. What we suggest is to repeat it at least every quarter, but I would do it every 6 weeks for my team.
Yeah. And what's the sophistication of the simulated phishing that you send? Because I'm guessing, you and I are very familiar with the industry. Lots of people listening to this show are cybersecurity experts. They would probably say, oh, I'd be able to guess whether it's a simulation. Is that the case? What does it look like, the emails that you send out?
So we developed a catalog of phishing attacks that we rated from easy to hard, depending on the complexity. And we have some of them who are very complex to spot, even for technical people, I would say. And we're also developing right now an autopilot mode where we decide, an algorithm decides which attack to send at a given moment. So even as an admin of the program, you can activate the autopilot on yourself, and you would be attacked like any other employees.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm really intrigued, actually, to have a go myself and see what it looks like. But perhaps when we get off air, I'll have a conversation with you about how we can use this within my own business there. But you mentioned let me put my teeth back in, smishing, which is SMS phishing sort of thing there. So that's something, obviously, for the future of the product, Riot. What about mobile device security? Is that something that you cover with Riot, smartphones, tablets, that type of thing?
It's a difficult problem because most companies now don't have, they don't provide a phone to employees. And so employees, they consider that their phone is their personal life. Yeah. And that the company, even installing an app on the phone of an employee, if it's not a phone that has been provided by the company, is hard. And so we're doing it the old way. So basically the bot interacts with, the cybersecurity companion interacts with the employee, and we have a course where we ask the employee up front, hey, I have to ask how long is your passcode on your mobile phone? And from there, we adapt the content of the course. Most employees, they have a 4 digits long passcode, which is to me a huge problem because, your phone has so much about you, and also because right now two-factor authentication relies a lot on your phone. So if I get access to your phone, even though you have two-factor authentication, it's not useful. So it's not useful anymore because I get the text with the one-time code, but if I have your phone, it's over. So basically, we're in this course Albert is trying to guess your passcode, and it's a short game where Albert asks 3 questions and end up trying to guess your passcode. And basically, it's based on a study on passcodes that says that 25% of the population have the same 10 passcodes. And usually humans are not very good at creating unexpected passcodes or passwords. So they tend to use the same 10 passcodes everywhere.
Yeah. Really interesting there. And I want to pick up on something you said, which is about Albert and the game. So gamification, I'm really intrigued about this. I think one of the keys to managed service providers' success with educating clients on cybersecurity is the gamification of cybersecurity protection. So I guess my question would be, how does Riot enable MSPs to track their clients' progress? So perhaps they've started off with 20% of vulnerabilities. The MSP wants to help the client get ideally to 0%. How do you track that progress and gamify it?
So basically, our most important KPI is what we call the completion rate. Yeah. The completion rate is when I send a course to an employee, what are the chances that the employee completes the course? And we're currently at 86%, which seems good, but I would be happy after 90. But that's something that we're tracking. And we're adapting the content of courses to improve the completion rate and to make sure that the employee goes through the whole course once we send it and through the whole program. What we have on our side is that because we send it over Slack or Microsoft Teams, and there's much higher chances of the employee actually taking the course. Because if I send it over email, it's just, you get, how many emails do you get every day, Richard?
Oh, hundreds. Yeah.
So it's probably something that we're lucky to use is the channel of communication in the companies. So that's also why we have such a good completion rate right now.
Yeah, because you said you integrate with Microsoft Teams, you integrate with Slack, those type of things. So you can use those as well to get the message across.
Exactly. Yeah,
that makes sense. So we've referred to them a couple of times already. Albert. So, I've seen Albert on your website. I've seen him in the product there. So where did the idea for Albert, the chatbot or the companion, to come from?
It's a long story, but basically, initially when I created Riot, setting up phishing simulated attacks was a bit of a challenge because you had to go through a long tutorial to whitelist our emails. Because so I said initially we were working with Google Workspace, and Google is not bad at spotting phishing. So very early we decided that we won't fight against Google spam filtering. But at the time, what it meant is that you had to do probably a 10 minutes setup on your Google Workspace to whitelist the IP addresses that we were using to send the phishing emails. And it would be a very long process. And I'm a product person, so I thought if it's very difficult, maybe we can have in the onboarding, we can have a bot that would explain to the CTO or to the IT manager what to do in Google Workspace to whitelist our emails. And so I created this bot for the onboarding of the users on Riot. And I thought, that's actually a good format. I enjoyed the experience doing the onboarding. Maybe that's something that employees would like too. And I mean, once you have that, it's pretty obvious that it should be sent over Slack because that's where all the communications happen. So that's how Albert initially, the initial idea of Albert came from.
Yeah, and we'll include a link in the show notes to everything we've talked about, from Y Combinator to cybersecurity. But I'd encourage everybody listening, go and check Albert out on your website, because I think it's a really great example of how you can humanize a bot, a companion to actually help people get along. People tend to like these things, and so it's a great way of softening it. So we've looked at awareness training via Slack, via Microsoft Teams. Can you tell us more about how you would take, MSPs to the next level with simulations? So after the basics, what can you do to perhaps help MSPs with that 5% of users who it's just not sinking in, you're just not getting there?
So I think that's part of our job. I think we made a great job at making a product that's very easy to use and set up. So I told that Google Workspace is very hard to set up. You have to go through a long tutorial. It's not true anymore. Now Riot is like for MSP, it's probably a 3-minute stop setup. I think we've done a lot of progress on that, and really setting up and launching your first campaign. And Richard, I hope you'll try it, but it's probably you can send it in the next 5 minutes.
Wow.
So you create your account. It's Google sign in. We sync automatically your employees from Google Workspace or from Microsoft, whatever. Both works exactly the same way. And then you just have to, the whitelist doesn't happen anymore. We use the Gmail API. So it's really three clicks and you're good to go. And you can launch your first attack. And obviously, on the first attack, usually 20% of the employees they end up clicking entering their password.
Yeah.
But it's good that you know that. And then you repeat the attacks and you have new employees coming in. So you never get to 0%. And I think that's fine. That's it. You've done your, there's no silver bullets in cybersecurity. Yes. You need to double down on having two-factor authentication everywhere, better passwords, and so on. So there's no easy answer to that.
Yeah, you can only mitigate, you can't eliminate, I think, regardless of education, technology, anything in between. So yeah, I'm interested as well. So if an MSP has run a phishing drill, they found their clients wanting a little bit, what would you then suggest the MSP do to help the clients be more safe going forward? Obviously, you've got the education, the awareness, but is there anything else the MSP can do as well?
In terms of consulting, you mean?
Yeah, so, educating end users, you've got the awareness training through Riot, but what can MSPs be doing to say to their clients, this is how you stay safe?
I think MSP have a role on setting up the platform the right way. Also, I think I didn't tell you that, but the first attack is completely free. The first campaign is completely free.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So anybody listening to this can try it out for free.
Exactly, and they even can try it on their customers as well. So the first attack can be launched. I mean, the first campaign can be launched up to it can target up to 100 employees.
Yeah.
So I mean, for most MSPs, that's good enough. And even for we put a limit somewhere, and 100 employees is a good subset and gives you a good example of the vulnerability of a company. And I would encourage MSPs to use the first campaign to convince their users that they need to invest more in their cybersecurity culture. Yes. It's actually the perfect way to show an example of something that can happen where you have a real KPI that you can use and track. Usually, I mean, you ask a CEO, is your team safe? Usually they work, the same way I was. They work with people that you selected, where you've been very selective at when you recruit. You think that they're clever people, and you think they won't click. And once you launch the attack, you realize you need to invest more in terms of cybersecurity culture.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see that this could be used as a foot in the door, or even a sales tool for MSPs who speak to their clients. And we know that clients always think, oh, it's never going to happen to me. But if you can actually demonstrate to them in a safe environment, hey, you are not as safe as you think you are, you're perhaps overconfident when it comes to cybersecurity, this could be a really powerful way of actually starting that conversation with people.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a good way. I mean, it's been working well for us, so It's really the right way to set up to open the discussion.
Yeah. So let's move forward a little bit. We've talked about awareness. We've talked about simulating phishing attacks. Talked about how Albert can be the companion to help people educate them. What about data breaches, though? So if the unthinkable does happen, how does Riot help the MSP and their clients when a data breach occurs?
No, so what we actually do is we detect data breaches that happen to your employees based on their email addresses and based on their phone number. So basically, because we sync directly with Microsoft and Google, we use that data and track in real time when your employees appear in new data breaches. And what you see usually is when an employee appears in a new data breach, usually hacker, and they're much more prone to attacks. So basically, let's say, Richard, you were part of the Facebook data breach. I think that happened 2 years ago, where your phone number leaked. It puts you as a favorite target for phishing attacks, right?
Yes.
Because now the hackers, they have an easy way to link your name, your email, your phone number, and target you and make and with the text. With your name and with detailed information on you. And what we do is that we detect that in real time. And once we know that you appear in a new data breach, we warn the employee. And instead of just saying, hey, you've been in the Facebook data breach and your phone number leaked, we go one step forward and we say, hey, this is what it means for your safety, Richard, and this is what you have to prepare for. And it's a bit of we go one step beyond just telling you what was part of the leak.
Yes, yeah. So you're educating people as well.
Yeah, and something else that we do that's a bit controversial is if we can, we get the data and we show it to the user. So, for example, we're trying to find the last known password that hackers have on you. And we would put it to your face and say, hey, Richard, this password that you use everywhere, because, usually people, they use the same password everywhere.
Yeah.
We put it to your face and say, hey, stop using it, because obviously it's automatized. I mean, the bot does the work for you. It's really different from just telling you, Richard, you've been in a data breach where your password leaked, and saying, hey, Richard, cute dog 83, you have to stop using that password.
Exactly. I know of an MSP based out of the US that does dark web monitoring and looks for these breaches. And when they're trying to speak to, say, CEO or the managing director of a potential client, and often, you phone, you try to get through, you get stopped by the gatekeeper because CEOs are busy people. But they said they reached a point where they'll phone the CEO, they'll reach reception or the office manager. Hey, can I speak to the CEO? Oh, he's not available, or she's not available at the moment. Can I take a message? Yeah, can you tell them I've got their password? So if they want to give me a call and we can discuss it. And of course, how quickly do you think they get a return call then? So yeah, you're right. It is controversial, but again, I think it's really demonstrating to people they are not as safe as they think they are. So yeah. In terms of the cybersecurity sphere, so obviously you mentioned you come from a finance background with the last company. So since you founded Riot, how immersed have you become in the cybersecurity industry as a whole?
I mean, I was initially, as a kid, I was I was a hacker at some point. When I was 12, I was hacking around. I mean, when I first got access to the internet, I ended up on a French website called Cool Paradise, and I was gathering tutorials on how to send Trojans to people. And so that was before it's not exactly true that I was in finance. I was in tech, but I'm a coder. I've been coding for 20 years. And before I even coded, I was hacking around. So I was sending Trojans to people I didn't know. It didn't last long, probably a few months, but I stopped very quickly, and I had no financial interest at all. I was just interested in the technological part of it, in how internet works, and how do I end up opening the camera of someone in Australia,
Yeah, so you understand from the ground up what is capable, what cyber criminals are capable of out there.
Yeah, I have this background, but to be honest, I didn't. I didn't pursue that so much. I was mostly interested in on the technical part, and I ended up being a coder. I mean, I've been coding for most of my life. I haven't coded probably in the last 3 years at all, but initially I'm a coder. I mean, the link between cybersecurity and finance is tech. I mean, tech, and I started my career in fashion, so and it was tech at the time too. So
yeah, absolutely makes sense. And the majority of us in this industry get into it because we have a passion for technology, we have a passion for helping people, and in your case, you were very aware of the potential pitfalls from it. So I can see why you've moved on to founding Riot there. In terms of keeping abreast of what's happening in the cybersecurity industry, are there any experts or sources that you'd recommend our listeners follow to stay current on cybersecurity?
There's a newsletter that I love called Zach, This Week in Cybersecurity. I don't know if you, it's from a guy called Zach Whittaker.
Okay.
Who's also, I think he's a journalist at TechCrunch. And he sends a recap of what happened during the week. I think he sends it on Monday, so and on Sunday. I see that now. I love the way so usually it's like 15 articles, but it gives us a quick summary of all of them. So it's pretty easy to read, and you get an overview of what happened last week.
That's interesting. We'll include, if you can share a link with me for that one, I'll include that in the show notes afterwards so that our listeners can take a look. I'm not familiar with it, but that sounds really interesting as well. So on the subject of cybersecurity, can I ask you a couple of new terms I've heard recently? We've mentioned smishing, which I can't say properly, but in cybersecurity terms, what is tailgating?
Tailgating is when someone follows you when you go through the door. Or try to, And during COVID, it was not very useful but we have a course on tailgating, but it's interesting because it's physical security, how people can exploit other people to get into the door and go to your office.
Got it. So it's the physical terms, and it's where people hold door. And in Britain, we're very bad for this. We'll hold the door open for somebody behind, which is, considered good manners. But of course, if you're letting somebody into a secure building, not so wise.
I don't have a good advice for you, but in the course, so we have a course on tailgating. We're just teaching people how to say politely, who are you?
Yeah, rather than just close the door in their face.
Yeah, exactly.
So another one that I've come across, and I think I know what this is, perhaps you can clarify, but what is CEO fraud?
So CEO fraud is, and that's actually a very interesting topic because it's directly related to a digital footprint. CEO fraud is a much more sophisticated phishing attack where I would use the name of the CEO of the company and target and employees with it.
Got it. So
and we do.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry for that. We also simulate phishing attacks coming from the CEO. So a very common example is what I call the gift card attack. So basically, the assistant would receive an email from the CEO, supposedly, and asking for a quick service to go buy a gift card for a very important customer.
Yeah, and of course it's not from the CEO, but because somebody gets the email with the boss's name on, they feel as though they've got to go ahead and do that. So okay.
And it's been evolving in the last few months, and now it's happening much more often on WhatsApp, and that's very interesting because you can easily buy a phone number, you can easily register on WhatsApp, you can easily put the profile picture you want. I can put your face, Richard, and send a message to someone saying, "Hey, it's Richard. Can you? I need a service. Can you help me with that?" And it's much harder to spot because there are so many, I would say green flags that it's legitimate.
Exactly. I've seen that happen on Facebook Messenger, where people open a fraudulent Facebook accounts and they've included your profile picture and photos of you. They add friends, then they drop a Facebook message to somebody saying, "Hey, can you help me out here and transfer some money here or whatever?" So I guess CEO fraud is that at the corporate level, isn't it? Targeting employees. Yeah.
And it's also directly related to what we talked about earlier about data breaches. Getting your phone number is much easier than it was before. And so that's also why we see a growing number of attacks over WhatsApp, over SMS, as we discussed.
Yeah.
And also probably the next step is over a phone call.
Right. Yeah. Have you come across the artificial intelligence, the voice simulation, where people are now simulating voices?
Yeah, deep fakes. Yeah. It's a new course that we're releasing this month.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you read this crazy story about this mother in Arizona who gets a phone call from her daughter? Have you heard this story?
No, tell me.
This one is crazy. So basically, she gets a phone call supposedly from her daughter, and the daughter says, "I messed up. I screwed up badly." And a guy takes the phone and says, "We got your daughter. We're gonna kill her if you don't pay $1 million to this account."
Yeah.
And basically, they ripped up the voice of the daughter from TikTok and made a fake message to imitate the voice of the daughter, and they called them the mother and asked for a ransom.
Wow, that is absolutely terrifying, isn't it? And I think we're gonna, that I can see how MSPs are going to be affected by this, because if you get a phone call instead of it's like CEO fraud, but if you get a phone call from somebody you think is your client asking you to do something, that's scary, isn't it?
It is, and especially to CFOs. Imagine the CFO of my previous company and gets a phone call from the CEO asking for a bank transfer. I would be interested in knowing if she actually do it.
Yeah. We need to put more frameworks in place, don't we, for checking and double checking. So you've got to, that old phrase of trust but verify. we've got to do these things going forward because the world is getting way too scary and sophisticated, to just trust on its own.
Exactly. That's where Riot comes in.
Yeah. So let me ask you as well. We've talked a little bit about the product, but what does the support for the Riot products look like? So if MSPs have got challenges, how can they reach out to people? What sort of hours do you do for support? What sort of methods?
Yeah, so support has been very important. I mean, customer success has been very important to me since the early days. And in the early days, I was adding every customers on Slack, so they would reach out day and night. And we've been trying to scale that even now that we are covering. Today, we're covering 100,000 employees, I think.
Wow.
And I think we're trying to keep the same level of support as we scale. So we set up intercom on the bottom right corner of the platform, so people can very easily, and that applies to MSP too, they can very easily reach out. And we try to, I think we have a below 10 minutes reply usually.
Excellent. Yeah. And we talked about how you've got employees in different countries. Are there, do you currently offer multilingual, or is that a plan for the future?
Yeah, we support 4 different languages right now. So initially French and English, obviously. And we added recently Spanish and German.
Excellent.
And the next 2 we're adding is Italian and Portuguese.
Wonderful. So, because we get an audience from all over the world here. So even though we're an English language speaking podcast, I know that we've got a lot of friends in Spain, Germany, other places who are going to be interested in deploying this to their native language speaking clients. I also think there's going to be a lot of MSPs listening to this who need some help, need some assistance with their clients who want to meet certain regulations, so GDPR, PCI, HIPAA in America. Those are just 3. Can Riot help in the journey towards regulation for clients as well?
So we started doing that. It's been an internal debate whether we should go beyond just cybersecurity and even cover all compliance needs. For example, should we provide a sexual harassment program or something like this? For now, we started by doing GDPR because we personally had, as you would imagine, a French team in France. We need to teach GDPR to our team. So we started a GDPR program that's currently in the work. We have 1 course on personal data that's already online, and we're working on 4 more that would be available on the platform.
Yeah, I can see the scope for this platform growing way beyond where you are at the moment as well, and so that's going to be very interesting in the future. In terms of the partnership program for MSPs, what does that look like? How can MSPs join up?
It's a good question. They have to reach out to Audrey, who's our head of partnership at audrey@tryriot.com. We also have a dedicated page on the website where they can sign in. Something that's great about Riot is that it's they can self-onboard too. So you don't have to. You can just try the product in the next 5 minutes. And obviously, MSPs, they get very discounted pricing, and they get the premium support that we provide to everyone.
Excellent. And in terms of the product itself, how is Riot licensed? Is it like per site, per user? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's price per employee covered. Knowing that the first campaign, as we discussed earlier, is always free up to 100 employees.
Wow, that's very cool. And again, for those listening, we will include all of this in the show notes so people can check it out afterwards. As we come near the end of our time together, Benjamin, I'm just going to ask on a personal level, who's inspired or mentored you? Is there anybody who you consider a big influence in your career?
I think one of them is Magellan, the explorer, who discovered a way south of South America to go through the India.
Yeah. So why is he such an inspiration to you?
So you know the story of Magellan?
Yes.
You know, they initially thought that he could go to India because he thought that he read somewhere that there was a way through Buenos Aires where you can get to India. There was a path there, and obviously he brought 4 different boats and brought a ton of people with him, and discovered that obviously you don't go to India through Buenos Aires, and they discovered that probably very early in the journey, so yeah, those 4 boats full of people, probably hundreds of people. And he had to guide them and lead, and to be a great leader to bring them to India. And they had a long journey, and he had to take the good decisions to make it there. So that it's still to me, Magellan is one of the greatest leader of all time.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a really interesting answer. What about books and things? Are you an avid reader? Do you find yourself recommending or giving books to other people often?
I don't read that much, to be honest. I read a lot of articles, obviously, and especially cybersecurity articles. One book that I read repeatedly is How to Make Friends and Win Influence. Have you read that one?
Is that's Dale Carnegie?
Dale Carnegie, yeah, exactly. I found it very useful.
Yeah. Again, for people listening, we'll include all of this in the show notes here, but it's interesting. I asked that question, Benjamin, to a lot of the guests on the show, and Dale Carnegie's work comes up quite often. So it's really interesting that so many entrepreneurs tend to get influenced by that. So
have you read it?
Yes, I have. Yeah, it's something that I think I got not an original edition, but when was it published? It was published in the 1950s, I think, was it? Something like that. So.
Yeah. I think even earlier, I think.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
But it's still very accurate,
Yeah, and the language has changed a little bit, but the underlying lessons, the underlying education there is still sound today, isn't it?
Yeah, people don't change. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm very conscious of our time, Benjamin. Thank you for giving up your time to speak to us today. Before we go, I've got to ask, what's next for Riot? What can we expect in the future for the company?
Much more AI. AI is a big topic for us, and it's just not a trend. So it's not a trend. I mean, we've been investing a lot on AI in the past few years. The cybersecurity companion that we have, I think will take a much more important part in cybersecurity teams in the future. And the capabilities of the cybersecurity companion will be much, much better in the coming months.
Yeah, well, we'll keep an eye on that. So for anybody listening to this who wants to find out more about Riot, who wants to meet Albert in person, so to speak, or indeed anybody who wants to reach out to you, Ben, and continue the conversation, what's the best way for them to reach you?
I'm Ben at tryriot.com, and I'm pretty much everywhere. Benjamin Netter on Twitter, Benjamin Netter on LinkedIn, everywhere.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to get involved with Riot, have a look at it, take advantage of the free simulated attack that you offer, what's the best way for them to go about that?
The website, you can always send for board. So you just enter your email, and you would receive an email right away inviting you to the platform.
Got it. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Benjamin, this has been a fascinating interview. I wish you all the best with the product, and perhaps you can come back and speak to us again in the near future and tell us how the product has developed.
Hopefully, yes. And thank you so much for having me, Richard.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ben. Hey folks, Richard here. Thanks for listening today. I know you've got a ton of options for who you listen to nowadays, so I really appreciate your support. Do you have any feedback on this episode? Ideas for future guests? Tweet me at Tubblog using the hashtag TubbTalk. I respond to every tweet and really appreciate your feedback.
Hey team, this is Richard again. Just one more thing before you take off, and that is MSP Insights. Now, every Tuesday, I share my thoughts on the business of IT with you, the managed service community. Thousands of managed service providers already subscribe to MSP Insights. It's easy to sign up, easy to cancel. MSP Insights is basically a short email from me every Tuesday without fail with advice on growing your IT business, plus cool resources I've found, discovered, or started exploring that week. It's kind of like my diary of cool things and often includes articles or books I've read, tools I've discovered, and events I think you'd be interested in, often sent to me by my friends and Tubb Talk podcast guests. So, if that sounds fun, a short tiny bite of MSP goodness every Tuesday, and you'd like to try it out, just go to go.tubb.co/Tuesday. That's go.tubb.co/Tuesday. Drop in your email and you'll get the very next one. Thanks for listening.